fans.
Good day, everyone. I am Colin Kate D. Partosa, the first reporter of Study Hub 6. So, before we dive into the details of the learner-centered psychological principles, let me first give you a brief background. So, these principles were developed by the American Psychological Association and revised in 1997. They were created to guide school reform and redesigned by focusing on the learner as the center of educational process. For many years, psychology has helped improve education by giving us insights into how people learn, how motivation works, and how development shapes learning. So the learner-centered model is very important because it addresses challenges like low achievements and school dropouts by focusing on students' needs, diversity, and active participation. In short, this framework shifts the focus from just teaching subjects to truly supporting how learners think, feel, and grow. With that in mind, let us now explore the principles and see how they apply to real life learning situations. So now we have the overview of the principles. It focuses on the internal learner factors such as thinking, motivation, and self-regulations. It also considers the external factors such as the environment, teachers, and peers. So it has four categories. First, we have the cognitive and metacognitive. Second, we have the motivation and the affective. And third, we have the developmental and social. And lastly, we have the individual differences. So, these principles are grouped into our categories. Today, we'll focus on the first principle under the cognitive and metacognitive factors, which is the nature of the learning process. So now, let us move on to the nature of learning process. So, learning process is the most effective when it is intentional, active, goal-directed, self-regulated, or learners must construct meaning from knowledge, experiences, and beliefs. So, learners works best when it is intentional and meaningful. And instead of memorizing facts, learners should actively build connections between what they know and new information. So next, we have the types of learning. First, we have the habit formation, learning motor skills, such as typing, sports, and etc. And then next, we have the cognitive skills. Here, understanding concept, such as math and science. Next, we have the learning strategies. It is methods that help learning, such as note-taking and mind maps. So, there we have the different types of learnings. Habit formations help with physical skills, and cognitive learning help us understand subjects deeply. And lastly, the strategies like summarizing help us learn smarter. So now we have the examples. Our first example is the history student connecting past events with today's issues. Second example is the science students experimenting instead of just reading. And third examples is the language learner practicing speaking daily while studying the grammar. So here, these are some of real life examples. It noticed that in each case, the students is not positively or not passively memorizing but actively making sense of material. So, to sum up all, the APA principles reminds us that learning is more than memorization. It is about being active, responsible, and intentional in the way we understand and apply the knowledge.
Good day, everyone. My name is Rachel May Hamoral. In this presentation, I will recall first the report of the previous reporter. So she discussed about learner-centered psychological principles, a framework for school reform and redesign and nature of learning process. So now I will discuss the important aspect of learning, the goals of the learning process, the construction of knowledge, and the importance of strategic thinking. These elements guide how learners grow and succeed over time. It focuses learning goals, knowledge, construction, and strategic thinking. Goals of the learning process. First, learners create meaningful knowledge over time. Second, learning must be goal directed. And the last, short term goals lead to long term success. The first goal of the learning process is to help learners create meaningful and coherent knowledge over time. Learning must be goal directed, meaning students should set and pursue goals that are personally relevant. While at first their understanding may be incomplete, with guidance and practice, learners can refine their knowledge and reach more complex long-term goals. Teachers play a key role in supporting students in setting learning goals that match both personal interests and academic requirements. Construction of knowledge. Learners link new knowledge with prior knowledge, depends and reorganize understanding. And the last, educators support integration through strategies. The second principle is the construction of knowledge. A successful learner connects new information with what they already know. This helps them expand, reorganize, or refine their understanding. Without this connection, new knowledge remains isolated and difficult to use in new situations. Teachers can support this process through strategies such as concept mapping, categorizing, and thematic learning, making knowledge more meaningful and transferable. Strategic thinking. First, learner use strategies to solve problems. Second, reflect on which methods work best. Third, educators guide and model effective strategies. The third principle is strategic thinking. Successful learners develop a collection of strategies to solve problems, learn concepts, and achieve goals. They also reflect on which method worked best for them. With guidance, feedback, and good examples from teachers, students can improve and expand their learning strategies, allowing them to apply knowledge effectively in new and complex situations. Goals to guide learning. Knowledge construction to connect old and new ideas. Strategic thinking to build lifelong skills. To sum up all, the goals of the learning process give direction to students' efforts. The construction of knowledge allows learners to connect and deepen their understanding, and strategic thinking equips them with tools to solve problems and learn independently. Together, these elements help shape learners into successful individuals ready for lifelong learning.
Hello everyone, my name is Mayan Hadra. I'm glad to be here to share my report. And now I will be recall the previous report, which is the topic is about the key laws affecting child welfare. And now I will start to discuss my report. Thinking about thinking. Higher order strategy for, for selecting and monitoring mental operation facilitate creative and critical thinking. Successfully learners can reflect on how they think and learn, so set reasonable learning or performance goals, selecting potentially appropriate learning strategy or methods, and monitor their progress toward these goals. In short, thinking about thinking metacognitive helps students manage and improve their own learning. So the next one, context of learning. Factors including culture learnings is influenced by environmental factors including culture, technology, and instructional practices. Learning does not occur in a vacuum. Teacher and major interactive roles with both the learner and the learning environment. Cultural or group influence on student can impact many educational relevance variables such as motivation, orientation toward learnings, and way of thinking. So the context of learning reminds us the environment, culture, technology, and teaching styles all play power roles in the shaping learning outcome. And the last one, motivational, emotional influence on learning. What and how much learn is influenced by the motivation. Motivation to learn, in turn, is influenced by the individual emotional state, belief, interests, and goals, and habits of thinking. The rich internal words of thoughts, belief, goals, and expectation for success or failure can enhance or interfere the learner. Quality of thinking, information processing. Student belief about themselves as learning and nature of learning. How mark influence on motivation. In short, motivation and emotion interact to determine how effectively learning engage with, process, and retain new information. Positive emotion enhance learning, while strong negative emotion often blocks it.
Good day, everyone. I am Zulaika Ilutian, and today I will talk about the intrinsic motivation to learn, effective of motivation and effort, and developmental influence on learning. But first, I will recall the previous report, which is thinking about thinking, context of learning, and motivational, emotional influence on learning. So now, I will be discussing about my topic, which is intrinsic motivation to learn. What is intrinsic motivation to learn? Intrinsic motivation to learn refers to internal drive of learners to engage in tasks because of personal interest, enjoyment, and the satisfaction of learning itself. Learners are naturally curious and creative, and these qualities fuels their willingness to explore. When learners are given tasks that intrinsic motivation is strongest when learners are given tasks that are new and challenging but not difficult. Connect, connect to their personal interests, provide opportunities for choice and control. When learners are intrinsically motivated, they do not rely on rewards or punishment to learn. Instead, their inner curiosity and desire to succeed push them to exert effort. This type of motivation often leads to higher creativity, problem-solving skills, and persistence in learning. The second is effect of motivation on effort. Motivation directly influences the effort learners put, in, put into their studies. Complex knowledge and skills cannot be mastered overnight. They require time, practice, and persistence. Without motivation, learners may not sustain the effort needed, and learning outcomes may remain shallow. Effort becomes visible when learners stay focused on tasks even when it becomes difficult, persist through challenge without giving up. Highly standard educator can enhance learner by effort, designing purposeful and engaging real-life situation, encouraging positive emotion during learning, such as curiosity and confidence. Effort is the strongest indicator of motivation. When students believe that the task is important, meaningful, and achievable, they are more likely to invest energy and attention. This connection shows that motivation and efforts are inseparable in achieving deep understanding and long-term success in learning. And the last one is developmental influence on learning. Learners grow and develop at different rates across their physical, intellectual, and emotional and social domains. These developmental differences shape how and what they learn. Learning becomes most effective when teaching method consider the learner's stage of development and provide tasks suited to their abilities. For instance, a child who is not yet strong in reading may excel at oral, storytelling, or problem solving. Adolescents who are more socially aware may learn better through group activities and discussion. Learners with disabilities may need adapted strategies to support their intellectual and physical development. Recognizing developmental difference ensure that learners are not limited to just one area of ability. A balanced approach that addresses the full child, cognitive, emotional, social, and physical, creates the best learning environment. Educators who understand these factors can design learning experience that respect diversity and promote equal opportunity for success. In conclusion, intrinsic motivation, effort, and developmental influence are interconnected factors that significantly affect how learners engage and succeed at learning. When students are motivated internally, they invest more effort when the effort is guided by developmentally appropriate teaching. Learning becomes meaningful and lasting. Educators must therefore create environments and nurture curiosity, encourage persistence, and respect developmental difference to bring out the best in every learner.
Hello everyone, my name is Mariam Bantala. As previous reporter have explained earlier, we have already learned about the different periods of human development, as well as how motivation and developmental influences affect learning. As the last reporter, I will be discussing the final part of our topic, which is about social influences on learning and individual differences. These ideas show us how important people, environment, and personal uniqueness are in the way students learn. So, number 11, social influences on learning. So first, learning is strongly influenced by social interaction, relationship, and communication with others. When learners have opportunities to collaborate, share ideas, and interact, their learning becomes deeper and more meaningful. Positive relationship with family, teachers, and classmates create a sense of belonging and self-confidence. In short, a supportive social environment makes learning easier and more effective. So, the number 12 is individual differences in learning. Next, we have individual differences. Every learner is unique. We all have different strategies, approaches, and capabilities because of our background and heredity. For example, some students learn better through visual, others by listening, and others by hands-on practice. Teachers need to recognize these differences and use varied methods so all learners can succeed. 13. Learning and diversity. Third, learning is most effective when learners diverse background and respected and included. Factors like language, culture, ethnicity, and socioeconomic status all affect how people learn. When students feel that their culture and identity are valued, they become more motivated and engaged. That's why it is important to design learning activities that consider diversity. 14. Standards and assessment. Lastly, we have standards and assessment. Setting high but achievable standards helps students aim for growth. Assessment is not only about giving grades, it's also about guiding students through diagnosis tests, performance assessment, and feedback. Teachers can see both strengths and weaknesses. This helps improve teaching and also support the learner's progress. To summarize, we learned that social interaction and relationship makes learning more effective, and learners have individual differences that teachers must consider. Diversity in background should be respected in the classroom, and finally, high standards and fair assessment are key to guiding progress.